Alright guys, before we move on, if you want to practice these questions using artificial intelligence and see what mistakes you're making, what score you are likely to get in the test, I have got a great news for you. You can practice all these questions with AI on our app, LAPT Exam Practice app, which is available on iOS and Android as well. Plus, if you want to take a full scored mock test, one free full scored mock test is available in the app, or you can register on languageacademy.com.au. The scorecard you will get with the mock test will be as similar as what you will get in the actual test, and which will make it very clear what score you are likely to get. I'll highly recommend each and every one of you to take that mock test, see what mistakes you're making, how to improve, and what other things you need to work on. Lastly, we have got our branches in Australia and in India, and we do provide online classes. If you need any help, do contact us on the numbers below. Now you can continue with the video.
The department determines whether or not the candidate has passed the examination. In cases where an appearance for the final public oral examination would constitute a substantial financial hardship for the candidate, the Director of Graduate Studies may recommend to the Dean of the graduate school that the examination be waived. Companies will want to be known not just for the financial results they generate, but equally for the imprint they leave on society as a whole. First, ensuring that their products contribute positively. Second, operating in a way that approaches a net neutral impact to the natural environment. And third, cherishing their people. When we recycle, used materials are converted into new products, reducing the need to consume natural resources. If used materials are not recycled, new products are made by extracting fresh, raw material from the earth, through mining and forestry. Recycling helps conserve important raw materials and protects natural habitats for the future. Researchers have found that divorce has different kinds of negative impacts on the planet, including higher demand for resources and a lower rate of efficiency in the use of household resources. People have been talking about how to protect the environment and combat climate change, but divorce is an overlooked factor that needs to be considered. The preparation of abstract is an intellectual effort requiring general familiarity with the subject to bring out of the points of an author's argument course for skills and experience. Consequently, a considerable amount of qualified manpower that could be used to advantage in other ways must be diverted to task of facilitating or to information. Public demand for education has remained strong, reflecting the importance of education as a means of social progress. Aware of the social value of education to the world of the work, the government continues to innovate and update the education system in order to produce a qualified and competent workforce.
The two international firms joined forces to win the big contract. The two international firms joined forces to win the big contract. A visit to the museum will take you back in time to the last century. A visit to the museum will take you back in time to the last century. The school has developed a creative partnership with parents. The school has developed a creative partnership with parents. You are not sure that you can skip the sessions for Wednesday. You are not sure that you can skip the sessions for Wednesday. Fruit and vegetables grow in abundance on this small island. Fruit and vegetables grow in abundance on this small island. There is the potential to develop more flexible working practices. There is the potential to develop more flexible working practices. We have a range of on-campus accommodation available to students. We have a range of on-campus accommodation available to students. The local elections will be a good test of the government's popularity. The local elections will be a good test of the government's popularity. We often ask our students to get access to all sorts of services. We often ask our students to get access to all sorts of services.
Your abstract should contain the empirical evidence of your research. Your abstract should contain the empirical evidence of your research.
Across the world, people have been watching the choice that Britain has made. I would reassure those markets and investors that Britain's economy is fundamentally strong, and I would also reassure Britons living in European countries and European citizens living here that there will be no immediate changes in your circumstances. There will be no initial change in the way our people can travel, in the way our goods can move, or the way our services can be sold. We must now prepare for a negotiation with the European Union. This will need to involve the full engagement of the Scottish, Welsh, and Northern Ireland governments to ensure that the interests of all parts of our United Kingdom are protected and advanced. But above all, this will require strong, determined, and committed leadership. I'm very proud and very honored to have been Prime Minister of this country for 6 years. I, 125, believe we've made great steps, with more people in work than ever before in our history, with reforms to welfare and education, increasing people's life chances, building a bigger and stronger society, keeping our promises to the poorest people in the world, and enabling those who love each other to get married, whatever their sexuality, but above all, restoring Britain's economic strength.
Community service is an important component of education here at our university. We encourage all students to volunteer for at least one community activity before they graduate. A new community program called One-on-One helps elementary students who've fallen behind. Your education majors might be especially interested in it because it offers the opportunity to do some teaching, that is, tutoring in math and English. You'd have to volunteer 2 hours a week for one semester. You can choose to help a child with math, English, or both. Half-hour lessons are fine, so you could do a half hour of each subject 2 days a week. Professor Dodge will act as a mentor to the tutors. He'll be available to help you with lesson plans or to offer suggestions for activities. He has office hours every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. You can sign up for the program with him and begin the tutoring next week. I'm sure you'll enjoy this community service, and you'll gain valuable experience at the same time. It looks good on your resume, too, showing that you've had experience with children and that you care about your community. If you'd like to sign up, or if you have any questions, stop by Professor Dodge's office this week.
What do we call a celestial event where two astronomical bodies align? What do we call a celestial event where two astronomical bodies align? Conjunction. What do we call the point in a planet's orbit when it is closest to the Sun? What do we call the point in a planet's orbit when it is closest to the Sun? Perihelion. What do we call the study of population numbers, composition, and trends? What do we call the study of population numbers, composition, and trends? Demography. What do we call the machine used for printing text or images onto paper? What do we call the machine used for printing text or images onto paper? Printer. What is the room in which you keep things when you don't need them? What is the room in which you keep things when you don't need them? Storeroom. What do we call the machine used to blend ingredients or puree food? What do we call the machine used to blend ingredients or puree food? Blender.
Three students are discussing struggling with academic writing at university.
I'm finding academic writing so tough this semester. I just can't seem to get my ideas across clearly on paper, and my grades are suffering. I think it's the structure that gets me the most. I end up rambling and never really making a solid point. It's frustrating because I understand the material. I just can't articulate it well.
I totally get that. For me, it's the research. Finding credible sources and then, putting them into my writing without plagiarizing is a nightmare. I spend more time worrying about citations than actually writing the paper. And honestly, just understanding what counts as good research is half the battle, you know?
You both hit on my biggest struggles, but I also think about how much there is to do. It feels like every class needs a massive research paper. Trying to balance that with everything else, like exams and stuff, is impossible. I start procrastinating because it feels so overwhelming, and then I end up rushing and doing a bad job.
Maybe we should look into the Writing Center. I've heard mixed reviews, but it could be worth a shot. They offer workshops on things like structuring essays and, proper citation, which might help us both, Chris. Or we could form a study group and read each other's papers before we hand them in. Fresh eyes can often catch things we miss ourselves.
I'm down for a study group. I've been meaning to try that. The Writing Center sounds good too, although I worry it'll be super busy so close to the deadline. I did hear from a friend that the library has research skills workshops. Maybe focusing on finding better sources could take some of the pressure off.
I'm in on both. A study group would definitely help with feeling so overwhelmed. Just having someone to bounce ideas off of could make a huge difference. And anything that makes my research better is a win. I'll check out the library workshops. And Sarah, maybe you can check out the Writing Center.
Deal. I'll look into the Writing Center and tell you what I find out. We could even set specific goals for our study group sessions, like outlining an essay or proofreading, like a certain number of pages. Having a structured approach might make it less scary.
That sounds like a solid plan. I think breaking down the writing process into smaller steps will make a huge difference. I'm actually feeling more optimistic already. Plus, misery loves company, right? It's good to know we're all in the same boat.
Absolutely. And knowing we're actually working on getting better is a huge confidence booster. I'm actually excited to start the next paper now. Let's figure out our schedules and get this study group going.
Three students are discussing revising for midterm exams at university.
Okay, so midterms are coming up. How's everyone planning to, deal with all this stuff we have to learn? I'm honestly feeling a bit overwhelmed, you know? I've tried making a study schedule, but it already fell apart. Does anyone have, a secret weapon or a study trick they want to share?
I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro technique, like 25 minutes of studying, then a 5-minute break. It helps me not get totally burnt out and keeps me focused. Plus, I actually get up and leave my desk during breaks, otherwise it doesn't really work. I also like using flashcards, especially for subjects with tons of definitions and stuff.
Flashcards are great for memorizing things, for sure.
I prefer concept mapping. It helps me see the big picture and how everything's connected. I don't think just rereading notes is enough. I need to, really get into the material. Have you guys tried that before? Sometimes I feel like I'm just staring at the page, hoping the information will magically jump into my head.
Concept mapping sounds interesting. I might try that. But I think my main problem is staying focused, you know? I always get distracted by my phone or social media. It's like my brain's trying to ruin my study time. Do you guys have any tips for, avoiding distractions? I've even tried turning off my phone, but I still grab it without even thinking.
There are apps that can block websites and apps that distract you for a certain amount of time. That might help with the phone thing. Also, try finding a place to study where there aren't a lot of distractions, like the library or a quiet spot in the student union. And make sure you're sleeping enough and eating well. It's easy to forget about taking care of yourself when you're stressed, but it really makes a difference.
I totally agree with Liam about taking care of yourself. And I think studying with a friend or in a small group can help you stay motivated and, keep each other on track. We can quiz each other and explain stuff, which really helps you understand it better. Plus, it's just less boring than studying by yourself. Maybe we could even do that sometime this week.
That's a great idea, Arya. I'm in. I could really use a study buddy to keep me focused. Plus, explaining things to someone else is a good way to see if I really get it. I'm free most evenings after class. What about you, Sarah? Want to do a group study session?
Yeah, I'm definitely in. Studying with you two would be awesome. Maybe we can meet in the library on Wednesday evening. Ola and I found some old practice midterms online. We could use those too. Just having you guys to, talk things through with would be super helpful.
Perfect. Wednesday evening sounds good. Practice midterms are a great idea too. Let's meet around 6 p.m., grab some coffee, and then get to work. This might actually be a good midterm season after all. Thanks for the study tips and getting me motivated, guys. I'm feeling a lot better about this now.
You're at a job interview, and the interviewer asks you about a gap in your employment history. How do you explain the gap in a way that showcases your skills and experiences positively?
You're at a social gathering, and a friend starts gossiping about someone not present at the event. How do you navigate the situation and steer the conversation towards more positive topics without alienating your friend?
With an abundance of low-priced labor relative to the United States, it is no surprise that China, India, and other developing countries specialize in the production of labor-intensive products. For similar reasons, the United States will specialize in the production of goods that are human and physical capital intensive because of the relative abundance of a highly educated labor force and technically sophisticated equipment in the United States. This division of global production should yield higher global output of both types of goods than would be the case if each country attempted to produce both of these goods itself. For example, the United States would produce more expensive labor-intensive goods because of its more expensive labor, and the developing countries would produce more expensive human and physical capital-intensive goods because of their relative scarcity of these inputs. This logic implies that the United States is unlikely to be a significant global competitor in the production of green technologies that are not relatively intensive in human and physical capital. Nevertheless, during the early stages of the development of a new technology, the United States has a comparative advantage in the production of the products enabled by this innovation. However, once these technologies become well understood and production processes are designed that can make use of less skilled labor, production will migrate to countries with less expensive labor. A survey from Aflac and Working Mother magazine found that growing healthcare deductibles are unaffordable for nearly half of working mothers. In recent years, medical costs have continued to rise, while wages remain stagnant, leaving working mothers with little money on hand to save for their deductibles, causing them to reallocate family funds to cover medical bills. Fortunately, like supplemental insurance are available as a financial safety net to help cover out-of-pocket costs, because no one should have to choose between paying medical bills and buying groceries for the family.
When joining a new company, there are often perks to consider. A company car, maybe a 401k plan. With millennials now making up the lion's share of the workforce, a number of companies are betting that helping to pay off student debt is the next game changer when it comes to attracting and retaining the best and the brightest. It's not a bad wager. Total education debt stood at a staggering $1.52 trillion at the end of March. And while the perk is by no means reserved only for millennials, it's not lost on anyone that the average student loan borrower will have graduated this year saddled with more than $37,000 in debt.
In 1831, naturalist Charles Darwin set out on a voyage to the Pacific aboard the HMS Beagle. Darwin arrived in Brazil in 1832, and began documenting the enormous biodiversity of the rainforest of Rio de Janeiro province. In his diary, he mentions parasite plants like the lianas and bromeliads that hang from trees. After observing the differences between mockingbirds on the Galapagos Islands and elsewhere in Latin America, the scientist began to develop his theory of evolution. His work would change the way most people think about nature and the origins of humans. Now 200 years after his birth, a great-great-grandson of Darwin is retracing his steps in Brazil. The expedition organized by Rio's Federal University visited 12 municipalities in Rio de Janeiro state, inaugurating signs along the path of Darwin's voyage. What's the literal definition of risk? Business schools use risk analysis. So, what do you mean by risk, and we need a dictionary? When you look at dictionary, this is literal definition of risk. What it says is, the definition, for example, the possibility of injury, a dangerous element or factor, chance of, degree or possibility of such loss, and so on. So, risk has two parts, as you look at the literal definition of risk. One part is the consequence of some kind of particular danger, hazard, loss. And the other is about the probability of it, chance and consequence, okay? And then at least just as English language concerns, when you look up the word of safe and safety, which you'll learn as, it's a little bit of a loop, a little circular argument that free from harm or risks, secure from danger, harm or loss, the condition of being safe and so on for all. Within Japanese corporations, the culture places greater emphasis on the overall success of the company than on any individual. This perspective might explain why a study revealed that 63% of Japanese workers felt guilty about taking paid leave. However, an even more troubling fact is that long working hours do not necessarily result in high productivity. In fact, Japan exhibits the lowest productivity among the G7 nations. Earlier, I mentioned the term karoshi, which refers to death caused by overwork. This phenomenon is officially recognized by the government and is typically characterized by heart attacks, strokes, or suicides resulting from excessive stress. Hundreds of cases of karoshi are reported annually, although some argue that these cases are underreported and the actual number could be up to 10 times higher.
When joining a new company, there are often perks to consider: a company car, maybe a 401k plan. With millennials now making up the lion's share of the workforce, a number of companies are betting that helping to pay off student debt is the next game changer when it comes to attracting and retaining the best and the brightest. It's not a bad wager. Total education debt stood at a staggering $1.52 trillion at the end of March. And while the perk is by no means reserved only for millennials, it's not lost on anyone that the average student loan borrower will have graduated this year saddled with more than $37,000 in debt. One of the companies touting the new benefit is the same one, Fidelity Investments, that already handles millions of workers' 401k plans. Businesses enrolled in its student debt employer contribution program are able to make after-tax contributions to their employees' outstanding student loans, setting their own parameters as to who and how much, with the help of a modeling tool for estimating their potential recruitment and retention cost savings.
Snakes cannot hear or speak as we do. Rather, they communicate through chemical signals by means of the highly specialized vomeronasal organ, VNO, or Jacobson's organ. The odoriferous particles, such as hormones or pheromones, which they pick up from their environment using their tongue, are sent to the VNO, in whose interior there are neurons in charge of transforming this chemical information into electrical impulses. The brain then takes care of interpreting these impulses and activating an internal function or a specific behavior response to the original stimulus. Currently, it is known that other vertebrates have similar organs, but these have proven not being better or even at the same level of snake's VNO, which has a unique ability for detecting and processing chemical information.
You know what's even more contagious than a cough or sneeze? A deep, rumbling belly laugh that leaves your sides aching and your eyes streaming. Laughter isn't only the best medicine. It boosts immunity, lowers stress hormones, and helps prevent heart disease. If laughter is what the doctor ordered, patients must start getting in line to see the latest film from the creators of the uproarious American Pie franchise, The Pool Boys. As encouraged by the magazine's Scientific American Mind, laughter actually reduces stress by easing tension and relaxing muscles, which keeps you more focused and productive. Your daily dose of laughter is as important as your dose of fiber or vitamin C.
Find out what your teen likes, then propose activities centered around that interest. A budding actress might want to see a play, while a sports enthusiast would prefer tickets to a game. If your teen likes your idea, let him or her plan out the details, like what play you will see. Teens need to feel that they have a voice in planning activities. Actually bonding during that activity might be a little more challenging. Turn off the parenting voice, but don't slurry too hard to be their friend. Teens want to hang with their peers, not mom or dad. In fact, it might be a good idea to allow them to bring a friend. That way, teenagers enjoy their friends' company, while also spending time with their parents.
Snoring not only affects the physical and mental well-being of an individual, but also disrupts the quantity and quality of sleep we'll bring mites or any other family member. Excessive snoring can lead to sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a condition in which a person wakes up multiple times during the night due to blockage in the respiratory system, and then cannot immediately drift back to sound sleep. This interrupted sleep at night leads to irritability and fatigue.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. As you know, we are currently deciding what sort of mobile communications equipment our staff will need in the next few years. Let's start by looking at what we have used in the past, because this will help us decide what we will need in the future. This graph shows the history of mobile phone use in the company. 10 years ago, we decided to give all sales representatives mobile phones, and this allowed representatives contact the sales office with orders to check the stock and prices before they.
The 99% has watched gas prices follow a perpetual climb that has left consumers wallowing at the pump. By the beginning of April, the national average was $3.92. Though it's since fallen about 18 cents for most regions, the West Coast is still staring at billboards offering $4.37 a gallon. Fuel isn't the only cost crippling middle-class Americans. While the Consumer Price Index, CPI, may be relatively unchanged on a seasonally adjusted basis, the Wall Street Journal says core inflation is rising, and the Federal Reserve can't ignore that for long.
Let's say if I'm asking which source you often use to get information, radio, TV, and the survey shows 62% of the people chose internet. You might be thinking I am going to say how important the internet is, or how quickly it has changed the world for a few years. But what if I tell you this survey is conducted on the website globalandmail.com? Our answer will be different, because the people who did this survey on a website must be frequent users of internet. This sample is a biased sample, so we have to pay attention to how a survey is conducted.
Philosophy uses logic and reason to analyze human experience. Philosophy uses logic and reason to analyze human experience. Students would develop confidence in their ability to think critically. Students would develop confidence in their ability to think critically. Many university lectures can now be viewed on the internet. Many university lectures can now be viewed on the internet. Humans use symbolic languages to communicate plans and intentions. Humans use symbolic languages to communicate plans and intentions.
I have scored 73 in my PTE in only 10 days.
I achieved my desired score just in 20 days.
My desired score.
Desired score.
Desired PT score.
Desired score.
Desired score.
Desired score.
Desired score.
मैं desired score language academy ਤੋਂ achieve ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ.